Security officers of Reddit. So, where are the hidden cameras, really? What have you seen on those backroom monitors you will never forget? Whether it's sexy, violent, scary, or maybe even paranormal. Part 2. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. I have been in the security business for about 5 years, ranging from shopping centers, malls, and private complexes. The funniest thing I've ever seen is an 18-wheeler dumping $175,000 worth of product down a private road right near the client site, and didn't notice a thing. By the time the driver was called, we had 90% of it cleaned up, and the truck was 3 states and away. Sadly for that driver and that company, nothing was able to be salvaged as the product was in glass vials. Second funniest thing was a guy picking a wedge out of his ass for 5 minutes, no lie. It was like his undies were being eaten by his asshole, because his hand was almost all the way in his pants. After that he went back to work touching food. The creepy things aren't too bad. I had a camera on someone's desk, and watched things magically move, fly off, and change positions between 2 to 4 a.m. And a random shadow figure that mysteriously appears on the cameras near the boiler room. The cameras catch a lot of fun stuff, but honestly if you don't work in the business you will never know that joy. As many others, I write this while I'm reviewing CCTV. I used to live in this little apartment that had 2 security guys. Basically these 2 older guys that would sit at the front desk for about half the day, handling deliveries and keeping hobos out of the building. After getting to be great friend with one of them, who was seriously about 75 at the time this happened, he told us about an event that occurred a year prior. The other guard had left some doors open overnight and a homeless guy had wandered in and frightened one of the female residents. She ran up and told JP, the security guy on duty. JP ran down to get him out and sees that the homeless guy has a knife in hand, so this 75-year-old, incredibly sweet guy tackles the homeless guy, shoving his nose into the floor and breaking it, straddles him, unknifes him, gets his hands behind his back, still on the floor, and while holding the guy down with one hand and straddling him, calls the cops. Sits there and waits until the cops get there. Boom. I did an internship at a very large amusement park in Central Florida. I worked on a log flume ride in a western theme section of the park. The control tower was part of our rotation, in which we watch about 100 cameras that are scattered throughout the interior and exterior sections of the ride. I saw more crap on the monitors than I can share here. But I will say the worst day of my life was Christian Youth Group Day, where the entire friggin' park was rented out to the most raucous bunch of hoodlums, young white kids, that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. I had to stop the ride many times each night due to kids jumping out of the logs to get it on, setting off the smoke detectors with their filched half-smoked Marlboros, and once had to run around the ride while all the guests watched me to find a girl that had jumped out to hide from her friends and got lost. Now, this is a ride that many people have died on. I say this as no one actually dies at this park, from jumping out and getting run down by oncoming 1,000-pound logs, so it's actually a pretty big deal when people get out mid-ride. The funniest thing was when I had to stop the ride when 2 very large individuals were unable to get out of the log at the end of the ride as they were wedged in tight. Almost had to get the butter. I used to do security for Target, as well as a Ferrari dealership, and I have a couple stories. As far as the most fucked up thing I'll never forget, I was working at Target and the day was going like normal. I received a call over the walkies that there was a man yelling at his kid in one of the toy aisles, and they wanted me to keep an eye on them. I went back to the security office and began to review the tape. We had a hidden camera in that department because there was a big blind spot that our camera system caused that ended up being where a bunch of people had been boosting value games and Blu-rays, so I had used that to keep an eye on this guy. After about 5 minutes, he resumed normal visual coverage with our cameras, and his kid began to reach out to pick up something off of the shelf. The man stood there, watching, and yelled at the kid to stop. He was using very aggressive body language and was beginning to cause everyone in the area to get a little nervous. A manager received a complaint, but at this point, there is nothing more than having one of the team members go and try to calm him down. After attempting to do so, they walked away, and the man shoved his cart forward. The kid, still holding onto the shelf, fell off, hit 3 different shelves, and landed on its head on the ground. The kid was no older than 3 or 4, and the man just kept on walking. We immediately notified police of what happened, saved the tapes, and approached the subject to come with us to the surveillance area. We detained him until the police arrived, and decided that after reviewing the tape, child services would need to be involved. The man ended up being a sex offender with a history of abuse. Blank. Underscore on a lighter note, I watched a man's pants fall down while he was exiting the building, and he just kept walking. Hashtag how to not give a fuck. Blank. Underscore I don't have too many stories at the Ferrari dealership about things that had happened. Anytime there was a theft at the dealership, it was a serious boosting, and usually for the tires or accessories on the cars themselves. We didn't keep many Ferraris outside of the main show hall. The lot was mostly Maseratis, but when we did have the occasional Ferrari, it was always a high-risk target for anyone passing by. I was doing a routine patrol when I noticed some guy walking behind out building where we stored a lot of the customer cars while they're waiting to be picked up. I approached him with my flashlight in hand, and asked him what he was doing. We had authority to call the police, and if we needed to defend ourselves, were given the permission by the client to use any physical force needed to ensure that we were not hurt. The man immediately showed signs of nervousness, and while attempting to walk away, saw that he had in his possession a very, very large knife, and a wrench. What he was planning to do with those, I can only guess, but back there was just a whole lot of darkness. I've seen one strange thing on camera that I haven't been able to explain. I don't want to say it was paranormal or supernatural because I'm sure there was some rational explanation for it, I just can't figure it out. The camera at one of the sites I worked nights in was situated in the high right corner of the lobby. So it looked over the entrance. The entire wall of the building facing the street was glass. It was a downtown skyscraper. One night, around 3 a.m. I noticed a light on the security monitor. It was a white cone of light that kept moving around in no discernible pattern. Being in the lobby, I was maybe 20 feet from the door, and when I looked up, I couldn't see any light. It was only on the monitor. This went on for maybe an hour. I tried to figure it out but couldn't understand what was going on. I switched the view of the monitor so that camera was the only one on the screen and the light was still there. I looked outside and everything looked normal. There was no extra light coming from anywhere. The only thing that wasn't business as usual was a building across the street had contractors working in their lobby, but they were too far away to be causing the light. They didn't even have any extra light on in their building. I worked in that building for 3 years and that was the only time that ever happened. It creeped me out a little, but, most of all, it just confused me. TL. Dr. Asterisk saw weird cone of light on monitor. Never found out what it was. I am not a security officer, but I work in a restaurant and we have cameras. Obviously, a few weeks ago my boss and I are cleaning up the kitchen before we head home. When we're done, she and I went into her office to sit, finish some paperwork and shoot the shit before I headed out. She has the video feed from the cameras in her office and I am staring at the screen when this black shape just masses from the corner. I cut her off and made her look too. We just sat there pale as fuck waiting for the shape to move. After, honestly it couldn't have been more than 15 or so seconds, the thing just receded and was gone. We waited a few minutes and both left together. It was creepy. I am a former supervisor of security for the US Bank Tower of downtown Los Angeles. Let me start off by saying that there are no secret cameras. All cameras are in plain sight. For the ladies of Reddit, unfortunately it's true. You are being watched, judged and scrutinized by security if you are good looking. If you are particularly attractive, you will be followed around using a PTZ, moving camera, men too. If the officer is gay, myself, most of the time we observe people falling and laugh until we get tired of you. Then we call for someone to assist you. If you are doing something bad or illegal around a site guarded by security and you get a tad anxious because you see a camera, have no fear, the likelihood anyone is watching is about 10%. Most of the time I'd just watch Netflix. While I was not a loss prevention officer, I was good friends with some of them during my first job at a grocery store. One evening, I was working in the back room, setting it up for our Saturday morning deliveries when I hear the PA tell me to ring 129, our loss prevention office. I call them up and they ask me to head over there immediately. Being around 16, I thought I was going to get to take part in some kind of steak stealer takedown, so I made my way to the little closet they occupied as quickly as possible. The guys were all crying from laughing and then they hit play on one of the CCTVs. My coworker, another youngin', was filmed walking down the aisles, picking his ass. They zoomed in and confirmed his hand was on the inside of his boxers, walking to the end of the aisle, looking around then smelling his fingers. My friend used to work at Houston's EZ Tag office. His story. The receptionist that was working was complaining about a noise she kept hearing coming from the server room, which was right next to where she sat. She said it sounded like someone was trying to open the door. So she called around and incident management said there were a bunch of alarms going off for the door to the server room. You needed badge access to get in there, so they sent someone down to take a look around. Watch carefully before and after he leaves. Knowing how incapable of bullshit my friend is, I still get chills. I don't know about cameras, but as someone who does network security, let me tell you, everything can be seen. Every site you visit, every email you open, every picture you look at. There are tools that can recreate whatever image or file you pulled off the internet. As for what I have seen, random weird Google searches including porn and lots of emails. I have seen emails about people cheating on their partners to the results of the doctor's visit about a bladder infection. Everything you do on a computer in most companies can be seen. I used to work for the Highways Agency in Southeast England just as a summer job. Along with my bitchin' 5-monitor setup, I had access to all of the security cameras in the Southeast and London that observed road networks. Other than peeping at pretty ladies walking down Oxford Street during their shopping, which I was cautioned several times for doing, the most interesting thing I saw had to be this hippie I saw walking down the hard shoulder of the eastern section of the M4. He was trying to hitchhike. He was wearing bright colors, be dreadlocked and carrying a large set of bongos. A kindly van driver pulled over to let him in and ecstatic he ran after and hopped in the passenger side. 5 minuets later I spot him again walking down the same stretch of hard shoulder about 5 miles further on. Looking quite dejected and with broken bongos. I don't know what went on in that van, but the driver did not like what that hippie did with his bongos. TLDR. Hitchhiking hippie, vacates van, broken bongos. In between projects last year I took a gig doing security at a core facility. Basically they melt metals and materials down and sell them. Anyway, I am in the rear guard shake alone on my second night when the only other attending guard radios and says, "Hey man. I gotta take off, emergency at home," leaving me to monitor the whole 20 KSQ featuring building. So I chill and browse Reddit in between my rounds and check the monitor every few for activity, as dirty folks have been known to steal copper out of the yard to sell. A motion alarm goes off, one set to notify of a delivery truck. I go around to open the gate. Nobody there. I make the stroll back and notice the lights around the guard shake are off. I do my best not to poo myself out of fear. Take out my flashlight and make the walk back. Reset the lights and resume Reddit. Moments later a man appears walking through the tall grass approaching the opposite side of the facility. I turn on the floodlights and he's gone. Severely spooked I grab my radio, gun and light and go to take a look. I notice footprints in the metal shavings leading out of the yard into the darkened facility. I enter to see all the lights back on. Motion activated from the opposite side I entered on. I make my rounds and find nothing. Back to the shack and the lights are off again. I enter to see the monitor looping on a fed of my walking the yard and the grass 10 feet behind me moving and pausing as I do. Needless to say I called for police assistance only to seem like a huge vag. I'm not a security guard or anything, but this is in the same vein. A while back I lived with one of my friends in an apartment. I had noticed that when I came back from class, something would always be out of place. Particularly around my laptop. I deduced that he was snooping around all my things when I left, so I decided to set up my webcam so I could catch him in the act. My girlfriend at the time brought me a box of some of her things. She just needed them out of her way or was slowly trying to move in. I'm still not sure. I decided to use this as bait, so I put a sign on top of the box that said, "Private," for good measure. I did the trick where you put a strand of hair over the box so you can later check to see if it's been opened, as it wasn't taped up. I set up my webcam to be motion activated and went to my class. When I came back, the box had moved slightly and the hair was gone. I reviewed the footage and the following is what I saw. Friend wakes up. Friend paces around the room for a solid 10 minutes. Friend approaches box. Friend leaves room for a few seconds and comes back. Friend down in front of the camera, where the box was below frame, for about a minute. Friend comes back up. Friend paces for another fucking hour until I get back. The fact that he invaded my privacy got me riled up, sure, but the fact that all he did for a solid hour was pace and talk to himself is very disturbing. Working at small casino, I was an assistant manager, not on duty. Some Darwin Award recipient tried to drive his Harley through the casino. It wasn't a very big place, Indian casino. So he thought he could make it from the back door to the front before anyone caught him. He didn't make the tight turn between the slots and ended up on his side. Best part. All the male security guards froze and the lone female, 6 feet 4 inches 280, basically jumped on top of the guy and sat on him until everyone came to help. Can't believe I wasn't on duty that day. At least I didn't have to fill out the paperwork. I worked security for 1 month. Friend ran the company while I was in college. I needed some extra cash so went to work. My job was guarding a construction site to make sure no materials were stolen. I had a small guard shack with 1 CCTV, 3 cameras to monitor. The setup was terrible and they weren't IR, so nothing was visible at night on them, which meant I had to patrol the area. The boring part about the job was it was at this point an empty construction site. There was a single backhoe and a 30 feet long ditch. No building materials, lumber, tools, etc. on site except the backhoe. My logbook each night was just myself writing about a cat venturing too close to the ditch and wondering if I should wait for backup to proceed with scaring the feline intruder away. Eventually quit due to boredom. I was a security guard for 2 years while going to college. During this time I saw many people having sex in their cars in the parking lots I patrolled. It was a very regular thing. However, there were a few spots you were bound to find some great footage. We had a building in Boulder, Colorado, which housed many upper-class snobs with way too much money. Condos ranging from $500K - $6 million. One day while sitting there watching the cameras I came across a woman having nothing but trouble trying to leave her parking garage. She was trying to stick her ticket in the garage, but didn't park close enough to the machine. She attempted to open the door and reach with all her might. Next thing you know, she is out of the car, her arm stuck in the seatbelt, and the car starts rolling away from her. The best part is when she finally freed her arm, she attempted to hold the Jeep by the opening for the door and stop it from rolling. She failed. The car drug her through the gate and crashed into a wall in front of her. We called everyone over for the next few weeks to watch the video. Unfortunately, the property management found out that we were laughing at the misfortune of one of their residents and had the videos removed. TLDR. Lady tried to pay for parking. Car drug her across the lot into a wall. You do not have to be smart to have money.